Last week, as we all expected, we had Taysom Hill go crazy in fantasy, as well as Rhamondre, Joe Mixon, Jared Goff, Saquon Barkley, and T. Higgins. These guys helped you win your week. They went crazy. Well, in today's video, I've got 10 names that will do the same in week 12, guys that will go nuclear. My hit rate through 11 weeks is 64%. We're starting off with many men wish death upon me. Brian Robinson versus the Dallas Cowboys. My RB15 on the week. Dallas right now is the 5th best matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule. In the last couple weeks, guys, Isaac Horrendo, the 4th running back on the roster for the 49ers, had over 100 yards, a touchdown, 19 PPR points against this defense. Bijan Robinson had 145 total yards, over 21 PPR points without a touchdown. Joe Mixon had 3 tuds just recently on Monday Night Football, over 35 fantasy points just last week. The Cowboys defense in 2024 is being shred to pieces. They have given up the 2nd most rushing yards per game. They've given up the 6th most total yards per game. And they also give up the 2nd most points to opposing offenses. They are almost giving up 30 points per game, which is crazy. The fall off in this Cowboys defense from last year to this year is very noticeable. Keep in mind, guys, though, Brian Robinson, while it's a great matchup, he has not been healthy for a while. He has been dealing with injuries pretty much since week 5. And you will notice that that clearly had an impact on his role for this team. In the first 4 weeks, you see a very healthy rushing attempt share, well over 60%. The snap share, well over 60%. But from weeks 5, 7, 8, and 11, you can see those numbers are down because he wasn't completely healthy. He should get back to his normal ways with the health that we see here in week number 12. And keep in mind, before his injury in week 5, Brian Robinson was averaging more points per game in that stretch from weeks 1 to 4 than Chuba Hubbard, J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, and Tony Pollard. And the Commanders are one of the biggest favorites on the week, which means that we could see Brian Robinson establishing the run game all the way into the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quarter. They are 10-point favorites. I love that for Brian Robinson's case. I'm expecting and predicting at least 17 touches, 90 plus all-purpose yards, a touchdown, and 17 plus PPR points. I do think he gets into the end zone this week. I think multiple running backs get into the end zone versus the Dallas Cowboys. The second player that we are firing up. Oh, baby, when you talk like that. Welcome back, Michael 1,000-yard Evans. All right, Mike Evans back into our lineups. I'm predicting that he's going to play. I believe he will. Go ahead, yell at me if he doesn't, but I think he'll be back. The Giants are actually the 10th worst matchup for your wide receiver, but this is not about the matchup. This is about the fact that Mike Evans is back, and there is his legacy on the line. Keep in mind, guys, Mike Evans hasn't had a single season without 1,000 receiving yards. He is currently at 335 receiving yards, and he will need 665 to reach it, meaning he will have 7 games from now to reach 1,000 yards, meaning he needs to average 95 receiving yards per game to reach 1,000 yards. And look at the upcoming schedule. It is set up so well for him to do so. The Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Panthers again, and the Saints. I have absolutely zero doubts that he and Baker Mayfield have already privately discussed his streak and wanting to help him get there again. Make me like Mike. Anybody watch that movie growing up? I mean, that was one of my favorite movies. Make me like Mike, baby. We are putting him into our lineups with confidence. I'm predicting 8 targets, 100 yards, and 18 plus PPR points. All right, you ready? Buckle in. This takes me to my spicy, hot, bold take of the week. Okay, here in week number 12. Tommy Cutlets, all right? Tommy Cutlets of New York is going to feed Malik Neighbors like he's never been fed before against the Tampa Bay Bucks. And Malik is going to crack over 100 receiving yards for the first time since week 4 of the season. The Bucks are currently the 3rd best matchup in fantasy football for your wide receiver in the last couple weeks. As an example, Darnell Mooney, 86 yards a tud, 18 PPR points. D-Hop had his best game as a Chief, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, almost 30 points. Juwan Jennings, 93 receiving yards, over 16 PPR points. And on the season, guys, the Bucks defense is top 3 in passing yards and total yards allowed per game, and they are top 6 in total points allowed to opposing offenses, giving up almost 4 touchdowns worth of points per game. And the Giants are currently underdogs, big underdogs, which is not surprising. But that leads me to believe that they could be throwing the ball deep into the fourth quarter, which could be great for Malik Neighbors. There could be some sweet garbage time in the fourth quarter. And look, I know it's Tommy Cutlass, all right? I know we're talking about Tommy here, but let's keep in mind that Tommy, I'm walking here, okay? Tommy was able to produce multiple good fantasy wide receivers when he was a starter for this team last year in that small stretch. Week 11, Tommy Cutlets starting. Darius Slayton has 18 PPR points. Week 12, Tommy Cutlets starting. Jalen Hyatt has 16 PPR points. Week 14, Wan'Dale Robinson with Tommy Cutlet, 17 PPR points. Week 16, Tommy Cutlets with Darius Slayton, 18 PPR points. And now Tommy gets to throw to the best receiver he's ever seen in his life. I'm predicting 10 targets for Malik Neighbors, 8 catches, 100 plus yards, and 20 plus PPR points. Take it to the bank, all right? They're closed on Sundays, though, so if it doesn't work out, but it's going to work out. It's going to work out. All right, Bo Nix at the Las Vegas Raiders. My quarterback 6 on the week, and I am so excited to start Bo Nix. Let's look at the Raiders matchup. It's top 7 for your quarterbacks as a matchup. Just in the last couple weeks, Patrick Mahomes had 23 fantasy points. Joe Burrow threw 5 tuds, 40 points. Just last week, Tua Tags had one of his best weeks of the year. 3 tuds, 28.5 PPR points. And yes, it is not a secret I love Bo Nix. I have been the conductor of the Bo Nix hype train for the past, 6-7 weeks. I know you guys are probably annoyed about me talking about him, but here's why I love the guy so much. He is top 7 in rushing yards right now, right around the yardage of a Josh Allen for quarterback rushing. That gives you such a safe floor. And after his rough start to his career in weeks 1 and 2, from week 3 onwards, the guy has been so good for fantasy football. He's been a star for fantasy football. From weeks 1 and 2, he's averaging about a touchdown per game, not a touchdown per game. Now he's almost getting 2 touchdowns per game in that stretch. He went from 2 turnovers per game to barely any, if for most games he's not turning the ball over. He went from averaging 11 fantasy points to now almost 23 fantasy points per game. I mean, if you look since week 3, he is the quarterback 8 on a points per game basis, and he's right around the Josh Allens, the Jared Goffs, the Baker Mayfields. I'm predicting this week 280 all-purpose yards, 3 total touchdowns, and 25 PPR points. Not that PPR matters for quarterbacks, but you know what I'm saying. The 5th player we are starting with ultimate confidence, James Conner at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle is a top 10 matchup for your fantasy running back. James Cook recently, 28 points, 2 tuds. Bijan Robinson had 23 points, a tud. Tyrone Tracy didn't get to the end zone, but 130 total yards. He was very efficient, over 14 PPR points. The Seahawks defense is top 10 in rushing yards allowed per game and total yards allowed per game. And James Conner is averaging over 94 all-purpose yards per game this season, and he's about as reliable as it gets for a running back this year. This is one of the highest over-unders of the week, 47.5 points. This could be a back-and-forth game all day long. It's a very close spread. I'm predicting at least 20 touches, 90-plus all-purpose yards, and 16-plus PPR points for Jimmy James Conner, all right? My 6th and 7th player are going to be combined together here. We've got Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey. All right, my quarterback 8 and my wide receiver 22. The Ravens is an incredible matchup. They are the 4th best matchup for quarterbacks and the best matchup for wide receivers in fantasy football. In the last 6 games, for example, Terry McLaurin had 2 tuds, almost 24 points. Cedric Tillman had 2 tuds, almost 100 yards, and 30 PPR points. Courtland Sutton had 122 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, almost 24 PPR points. And as we know, Jamar Chase destroyed this team, averaging over 48 PPR points per game against the Baltimore Ravens in 2 games this season. And look, as for the Baltimore Ravens against quarterbacks, we see Dak Prescott, who had 29 PPR points, 3 touchdowns, almost 400 receiving yards. We have Jaden Daniels, who had 2 touchdowns, almost 21 PPR points. We had Jameis Winston with 3 touchdowns, almost 24 PPR points. Joe Burrow, who averaged over 33 points per game in 2 games against the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens right now are a team that you've got to beat through the air. They give up the most passing yards per game, and they give up the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game. So the game plan going in is, all right, our rushing attack might be stifled. We will have to air it out. And after a really rough start for fantasy football for Justin Herbert, he has really been unleashed in recent weeks. They were not allowing him to throw the ball very much in the beginning of the season. If you look at the first 4 weeks, right, I mean, he only has 2 games over 25 passing attempts. And it's not good for fantasy football. But from the bye week onwards, we have multiple games over 30, 35, even a game with 39 passing attempts, they're letting him air it out a bunch more, and it has led to even better fantasy days. And this is tied for one of the highest over-unders of the week, 50.5 points. I think there's a really good chance, similar to last week versus Cincinnati, that the Chargers are going to have to throw the ball all the way throughout this game. I'm predicting Herbert with at least 3 touchdowns, 250 yards. McConkey's going to get 8 targets, at least 80 yards. They're going to be a great duo for week 12. All right, the 8th player we are playing with confidence, Aaron Jones at the Chicago Bears. The Bears are the 10th best matchup for your running back in fantasy football this year. You can see names like Chuba Hubbard with 17 points, James Conner with 15, Josh Jacobs with 23. The Bears defense is top 10 in rushing yards allowed per game and yards per carry allowed per game at 4.8 yards per clip. And Aaron Jones is averaging almost a touchdown per game versus Chicago in his entire career. He knows this franchise really well, and he knows how to exploit them. I'm predicting at least 17 touches, 100 plus all-purpose yards, and 18 plus PPR points. All right, moving on. Staying in the same division, but a different game, DJ Moore versus the Minnesota Vikings. Look, I know, I get it. DJ Moore has been so disappointing this year. I'm totally on board with you, but this is the matchup for him to bounce back. The Vikings are a great offense. They're going to score points, and they are currently a top 5 matchup for your fantasy wide receiver. Jaden Reed had 140 yards and a touchdown, 27 PPR points. Garrett Wilson had 100 yards, a touchdown, almost 30 points. Amon-Ra St. Brown had over 100 yards, 25 points. Puka Nacua had over 18. And similar to the Ravens, guys, the way that you beat this Vikings team is through the air. They give up the fewest rushing yards per game, and they are a top 5 team in passing yards allowed per game this year. And with Shane Waldron being fired, the Bears offense looked much more competent last week. I expect Caleb Williams to get better and better and better. He looked so much more comfortable last week. He looked a lot more like himself. I'm predicting at least 9 targets, 90 yards, and 17 plus PPR points for DJ Moore. All right, last player on the week, Rhamondre Stevenson at the Miami Dolphins. The 7th best matchup for your running back in fantasy right now. Remember, guys, Zach Charbonnet, when he was a starter for the Seahawks, had 2 tuds, almost 25 or 26 PPR points. Tony Pollard had a week with almost 20 points. And Rhamondre Stevenson himself earlier in the season had 92 total yards, a touchdown, and 19 plus PPR points. Since week 8, Stevenson is back to his workhorse ways, if you will, right? What we expected to see from Rhamondre Stevenson. Since week 8, he has a better utilization rate than Derrick Henry and Ken Walker, right? That is exactly what you want to see for fantasy football. It was a little weird to start the season, but he is back on track as a workhorse guy. I'm predicting 20 touches, a touchdown, and 17 plus PPR points. I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button and show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Here's what I'll say. If you have a tough decision to make this week, check out the pinned comment. You can ask me a question at any time on our website. And if you don't have a free account on the Flock Fantasy site just yet, flockfantasy.com/land. Use our promo code LAND to get a free account. And when you use our promo code, you'll unlock the My Team Analyzer, the Expert Consensus Rankings, and the Trade Calculator all for free by becoming a free member with our promo code. I appreciate y'all for watching the video. I'll see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your week, and let's get some wins. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.